Conqueror! song like that, I think it's time to bring the mood down to a little bit more somber tone. I would like to talk to you all today about death. It has been called the great gig in the sky, eternal slumber, the hereafter, heaven, hell, and everything in between. By any name, death is one of the only things that we can all count on as a certainty, and the inherent mystery of death has fascinated mankind throughout history. It seems that we humans have a love-hate relationship with mysteries. We are intrigued by them, yet we cannot stand not having answers. So we seek understanding by whatever means we can. We often either overindulge in or eschew completely the mysteries of life, God, spirituality, sex, drugs, and any number of other things. Death is the same way. We often cannot grasp what death really means, so many of us fear it, and avoid even mentioning or thinking about it. Such avoidance of death drives some to seek constantly a kind of fountain of youth, whether this be a plastic surgery, chemical treatments, or major lifestyle changes. On the other hand, many people surround themselves with death via violent video games, movies, music, and artwork. Even if we do not want to admit it, we experience some kind of satisfaction in viewing death and violence. How often do you actually change the channel when the news anchor says the following images may be disturbing? Why must everyone slow down to see the car wreck on the other side of the highway? Why do we enjoy sad, scary, and violent films? Perhaps it is because we long to experience emotions that are not normally part of our everyday existence. Perhaps we are continually trying to come to terms with our mortality. At some point, this is something that we all must do so that we can accept it without it holding sway over the rest of our lives. So how do we go about such a task? Scientists try to find natural explanations in order to illuminate the obscurities of the universe. Freshman psychology majors who have made questionable choices regarding substances that are as of yet legal in only a couple of states discuss such mysteries at great length. The faithful pray, writers write, artists paint, and composers write music. Several composers in particular seem to focus very keenly on death in their later years. Musorgsky, whom you have just heard, Brahms, Schubert, and Strauss each composed song cycles in the final years of life which attempt to accurately illustrate, if not actually explain, human mortality as they saw it. Certainly, these were not the only composers who touched on the subject. Indeed, how many requiems have been written throughout the centuries? I would be remiss not to mention Wolf, Schoenberg, Cage, Crumb, and countless others who describe death in their art song output. Mahler alone would necessitate a 3-hour presentation. However, the scope of this lecture recital will only permit me to focus on the previously mentioned 4. So what about death was so fascinating to these composers? Did they have someone close to them die? Were they acutely aware of their own impending death? Were they trying to explain the unexplainable? Or was it simply a romantic fascination with the supernatural, the unknown hereafter? There is a multitude of theories that try to explain this phenomenon. Some psychologists have posited that humans have a natural fascination with the macabre because we have an innate desire to empathize with others in order to strengthen social bonds. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, founder of the hospice movement in America and best-selling author known for her groundbreaking work with dying patients, stated that there are no negative occurrences in life, only opportunities for growth. That suffering is basically the means by which we grow as humans. A similar sentiment was put forth by Dr. Viktor Frankl, a psychologist and Holocaust survivor who posited that humans find meaning in their life through suffering. Many religious ascetics describe welcoming suffering as a means of becoming closer to God through prayer and purification. Taking these theories all together, one might surmise that we have a need and a desire to grow and improve as individuals, and so we attempt to experience suffering and death and various other emotions vicariously through works of art, whether it be music, movies, paintings, dance, or literature. We feel truly alive when we can empathize with the protagonist of a story and their hardships, even, or perhaps especially, if we have not had the same experiences in our own life. A safe, stable existence is often not fulfilling, so we see greater emotional peaks and valleys in order to feel like we are living rather than simply surviving. To quote the movie Fight Club, after the main characters voluntarily roll their car, Brad Pitt says, "Boys, we've just had a near-life experience." This search for something more is why adrenaline junkies and thrill seekers risk their lives on a regular basis. The 19th century romantic equivalent of this phenomenon was the idea of Wanderlust. As we will see with the lonesome character in Schubert's music, the proverbial wanderer is chasing something that he can never fully achieve in this life, so he searches for either an escape from reality or an escape from life itself. It has been said that bad art leaves the observer feeling nothing. Good art leaves us feeling something we have felt before, and great art leaves us feeling something we have never experienced. It would seem then that great art is born of great suffering, yet can be appreciated by those who have never suffered. Dr. Kubler-Ross, in her seminal 1969 book, On Death and Dying, describes 5 distinct stages of dying and grieving which she observed in her decades of work with terminally ill and dying patients. They may happen in different orders and last for different lengths of time for any one individual, but according to her, as well as hospice nurse Carolyn Rice, everybody experiences every stage at some point. These are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Is it possible that these composers were subconsciously aware of these stages and included them in the compositional fabric of their song cycles? Or did they reject such notions in favor of accentuating the macabre and nihilistic views of death? Most importantly, can such works of art as these songs facilitate our own acceptance of mortality today? If we examine each composer in turn, we find that their experiences were quite different from one another, and thus their musical interpretations of death vary distinctly from each other as well. Musorgsky had no lover with whom he was very close. He was rather young, 42 at the time of death, and only 35 when he wrote the Songs and Dances of Death. And aside from severe alcoholism, he had no terminal disease. His religious views were more akin to the occult than to Christianity. He was the shock rocker of his time and was attempting to make a bold challenge with this set of songs. In Russia at the time, even speaking the name of death was thought to be enough to invite it into one's life. Therefore, creating 4 songs in which death is personified was a very scary endeavor indeed. The songs were composed in a very close collaboration with the poet, Arseny Golenishtchev-Kutuzov, who was a close friend and distant relative of Musorgsky's. Each song shows death in a different light by using different song and poem types: a lullaby, a serenade, a folk dance, and a triumphal march. In each song, the paradoxical nature of death as a benevolent and or fearsome specter is revealed in different ways and to varying degrees. Yet, were the poet and the composer merely trying to write scary songs? Or was the personification of death a way to make it more understandable and approachable? If the mystery of God was made clear through his personification in Christ, then it would stand to reason that our complex relationship with mysteries would demand a similar way to understand the mystery of death. The final song in this set, which you earlier heard, is the Triumphal March, in which death is a field commander. There is an obvious connection to the poet's father, who was a field commander and national hero who defeated Napoleon. This song opens with a violent battle scene, cannons roaring, bullets flying, rivers of blood flowing. As night descends, the dead litter the ground as the wounded offer up final prayers and moans of pain. Suddenly, death appears as a great general and smiles as he surveys the carnage. He bellows out to his new legion that he has come to ease their suffering and pain and grant them eternal rest. However, the repose of which he speaks is a decidedly nihilistic existence, in which their bones will forever remain in the ground, never to rise from the dead. The lullaby, the first song in the cycle, is in the form of a ballad, with a narrator, a mother, and death all singing about a dying child. The mother pleads with death not to take her only joy away from her, but death repeatedly and calmly reassures her that he will ease the child's pain and will let him sleep more easily. He closes each phrase with an eerie lullaby, Bayushki, Bayushki, Bayu, the last one resolving to tonic as the child finally falls into an eternal slumber. This song shows the Kubler-Ross stages from the perspective of someone who is grieving rather than someone who is dying. She is fearful and angry at first, denouncing death for his presence. But her last line is a mixture of bargaining for a few last minutes with the child and inherent acceptance of the child's inevitable death.